fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back. Got my boy, Captain Patric Garmeson, Ugly Fishing, back by popular demand. You guys might recognize the name because he was one of the featured experts in our Flounder Mastery course. That was the one that we did basically starting from Texas all the way up to New England area, where we had what John Skinner up there kind of taking over that area, since he is the fluke master. And Patric took over the whole Alabama and a lot of the area, the Gulf. And, man, that was such a popular course. Definitely one of our top-selling courses just because, flounder, they're so fun. They're so unique. Kids love them. And doggone, they're really, really tasty. And now we're talking about something different, though, something kind of unique to the times right now, and that's virtual fishing tournaments. So, Captain Patric, welcome back, brother.
What is up, Joe? Man, I'm it's an honor to actually, I was unaware that the Flounder Mastery course is one of your top sellers. So that's an honor that I'm a part of it, and I'm also honored that y'all had asked me to be a part of it. So that's really cool just to hear that news. So and man, everything's cooking along up here in Alabama. We're still fishing, still having a few guide trips, shooting some videos, social media content. So I am doing my best to stay relevant as a fishing guide.
Well, I'm seeing you're quite active on Instagram. I guess the good news, as a captain, you have the area pretty dialed in, and when there are fewer charters, you're out there and like you said, getting some great footage and staying relevant. And are you participating? I know you mentioned your son's participating in some of these virtual tournaments. Talk about that. Yep. and talk about kind of what's happening now in terms of the growth of these with this social distancing and everyone basically living their lives online right now.
Yeah, it's definitely unique times we're in right now, and there's have been quite a few of these virtual tournaments that have popped up. The first one that popped up was the Stay Strong tournament, and I know y'all are involved with those guys, and Robert Stale High School who's helping put all that together, and Yep. It's all launched on the Fishing Chaos platform. And anyway, it's a pretty doggone user-friendly deal. And the best part of that tournament is it's free. So what I did is I got Cooper, my son, he's 7. We got him an email address. We got his own account in Fishing Chaos. We got it all set up on his iPad. And so now when we go fishing, he has a legitimate excuse as to why we need to bring his iPad on the boat. And it's not just to play Minecraft. And and so anyway, so now we've got the competitive side of this thing where we're going fishing, but this kid is bound and determined that he's going to log every single catch, anything from a 6-inch long croaker to a 13-inch hardhead to his biggest redfish that he's logged so far. He caught a 30-inch redfish.
Nice.
Couple maybe 2 weeks ago, and man, he's eating it up. Like he has the competitive drive of his mother. Like I'm competitive, but she's like knock you down out of her way competitive, and he's getting that way. So it's exciting to see his competitiveness come out in him, and if we're in an area that's not producing, he's starting to ask me about what's the next move and stuff like that. So it's really engaged us in a different level now that we're every single time he and I go on the boat, we're fishing in a tournament.
Yep.
And he's fishing his tournament, but then I'm entered into which actually we got him entered into the Auburn Bass tournament, or the Auburn Bass team. They have a tournament going on, and they have Redfish as a category, and then we have the Salt Life guys. They started a tournament, and I mean all of those are free. So the prizes will be donated through sponsors and stuff like that. So why not enter some of this stuff and challenge your friends to join them, so y'all are out there competing against one another. And I mean, like you said, the social distancing thing and everybody kind of sticking to their own boat, their own kayak, and all that stuff. It certainly makes the fishing experience that much better. And then like you and I were talking about off the air, you can start as an angler. You can start setting some different goals for yourself that you may not have. They may not have been there before you started fishing this year, and all of a sudden a tournament comes up and there's an aggregate bass category, and you've got a farm pond by your house, and you want to go out there. Now all of a sudden you want to go fishing in that farm pond and catch the biggest bass you can catch, or the most bull reds, or whatever the category is. And it's certainly bringing some stuff to light that that I don't know that we would have had we not been shelter in place and all these new terms that we had to learn.
And one other thing that it does, you mentioned, your son's logging everything. When you do log everything, like, many guides and many pros do, you start being a little bit more in tune with the trends, which is really critical. And, we do that with our Insider Club. It's one of the many reasons that people join us in our private Insider Club is we're doing that personally. And with all of our 13,000 members. And so we've got 5 years of trends of exactly what's been biting, what tide, what the weather was like, if the water was clear or murky, if it was raining. We have all this stuff. And I mean, it's a lot of power. I mean, because now you're making decisions based on like science and trends, not just, hey, I think they're gonna be here today. That's pretty cool. And just the fact, man, every cast, dude, and every single time you feel a strike, it could be, winning fish. That's what gets me excited about that. Of course, I get so competitive it sometimes ruins my day too on the tough days. But on the positive side, which is a whole lot more positive than negative, it is cool to know that every cast and certainly every strike could be a winning fish, even if there's not real money on the line. Just kind of cool to be able to post those pics and get the bravos and the high fives and the likes and stuff, and maybe win a cooler, glasses or something like that.
That's right. And at the end of the day, it's just another reason to try push yourself a little bit harder. I know you're always trying to push your audience and your tribe along to better themselves as anglers, and having these virtual tournaments is certainly going to do that. So I mean, it's and I guess and something else I talked about off the air was the fact that some of the people might be naysayers and saying, oh well, people could do this or do that. Well, that can happen in any tournament, even when people are weighing in and stuff. So don't put a negative spin on any of this stuff. Go out, enjoy yourself, follow the rules of the tournament, take your photos, do the best you can, and have a good time. And at the end of the day, if your redfish that may have been the catch of your life ends up also winning first place, then I mean that's an absolute double whammy and something to you may always remember. So that's a whole nother reason to do it too.
Yep, I love it. So real quick, you'd mentioned Fishing Chaos. What is that?
Yep. So Fishing Chaos is a platform I use for doing. They host online tournaments. They have built-in catch logs. It's actually where I do all of my charter bookings and stuff. So if somebody books a charter, they actually book it through Fishing Chaos. And it's my own landing page and all of that stuff.
Got it.
They've got some cool stuff going on, and that's exactly where if you want to go and check out if you've got kids, and I think the tournament runs all the way through the NMA, is the Stay Strong tournament, and I've seen that y'all are involved in that, and so I mean it's a really cool opportunity just to have another reason to get your kids motivated to make one more cast or listen to you a little bit more about how to do things right or whatever. So it definitely is fueling some competitiveness in my family for sure.
Oh yeah, I love it. And just getting kids outside, and that's one of our insider members who's putting that Stay Strong on, and he asked us to help participate, and we're all about that. I love it. We're considering doing one ourselves a little bit later this summer. And if you're listening and you want us to host our own, and ours would be free as well, and probably have some cool gifts. I don't think you can have too many of these just because they're so easy to scale, and if they're they're free, you can enter multiple tournaments, which is always kind of cool.
That's right.
So let's talk about how to win these tournaments. Meaning, let's talk about fishing tips. I know you're fishing year round. You travel a little bit if you have to. All over that area. What's hot right now? We're talking like May, and let's just go even into June. What's hot? You got trout?
Yeah, speckled trout. Speckled trout is really that's really the hottest thing going in May. We do have triple tail or blackfish, depending on where you are, what you call them, but those guys start showing up. We actually caught our first one today. And they'll continue to increase in numbers. There's a couple of these tournaments that have black drum on the list, and that's a really big. I mean, that can be a really big catch, and they're really showing up heavy in the flats right now. So anywhere where like there's some grass beds starting to develop or some oysters, there's a lot of these really big black drum that are showing up, and then the redfish are always going to be hot. I mean, it's pretty rare that red fishing isn't good in Mobile. So redfish is going to be hot, and the redfish, I would say, on trying to catch your biggest ones, you're probably going to want to be in the Gulf. Most of those really big fish are going to be out there, although it's not uncommon to be in a school of little school trout and all of a sudden catch a 40-inch bull red on your popping cork in your voodoo shrimp underneath there and catch a 40-inch bull red. But I think thinking about that kind of deal is you could probably get, if you wanted to try it, you could get in around where you're catching a lot of those little school trout and actually try some really big baits, and you may be able to have success at catching that bull red without having to take little 10 and 12-inch speckled trout off your hook every 30 seconds, But there again, on like the kids tournament, every single fish counts towards something. So, where it just depends on what your category is and how you're going to have success at winning. And it might be that as catching as many fish as possible is helping you win. So, I don't know, Joe. I've got so many ideas running through my head. We might have to get a little more focused. But as far as but as far as the big picture in Alabama, the month of May, speckled trout is typically our hottest species, and probably the most targeted species as well. And they're going to be in the largest numbers in the south end of the Mobile Bay, the Mississippi Sound, and the Gulf beaches will start firing up if they haven't fired up already. I attempted to get out there today, but the swell was too big for me to get my boat out there in front of the beach and not feel like I was going to flip over. So I'll have to report back on the Gulf side of things on another day.
Understand? Yeah, we'll start with the speckled trout, and then we'll kind of target the redfish next. So I'm curious because I know you use live bait and lures. What's your go-to for speckled trout here this time of year?
I'm gonna start if I have a chance or a choice and conditions are good, then I'm gonna start everybody with top water if we can. Early in the morning, until that surface activity diminishes. But you're going to have a really good shot at catching a big fish. All the way even up until like 8:30, 9 o'clock on top water. And then really at any point during the day, if you're just trying to catch a big one, throwing a top water bait in say 5 foot of water or shallower is not out of the question. I like a hot pink top water bait, and outside of that, something maybe just chrome and maybe a blue back or something like that. But just I keep it pretty simple. And then other lures that I like would be there's a lure called a slick lure. I really like that one for catching big fish. I actually caught my biggest one of the year just a couple weeks ago. I caught a 5/8, 5 pound, 8 ounce, or 5 pound, let's see, it's 5.8. So whatever, how many ounces that is. Anyway, getting too far off into this, but I caught one on a slick lure the other day. That was the biggest one I'd caught so far this year.
Thick trout, man.
Yeah, it was a chunky one. And then after that, artificial lures. Man, I've catch numbers and size on that mirror lure MR17, the typical Mirrodine. And then throw in soft plastics like on the bottom. I have not tried the Slam Shady.
Oh, baby!
Forgive me for not having tried it, but
we got to get you some.
Yeah. So we need to get a Slam Shady up here for me to try that, baby. But so something along that line, like that paddle tail grub, is a really good alternative to having live bait. Now on the live bait side, if I'm going for my biggest trout and that's all I'm worried about, I'm gonna fish pogies or menhaden, whatever part of the country you're in. Well, we call them pogies down here. That or live croakers, and those are going to be the two go-to bait choices. Now, not to say that you can't catch a big one on a live shrimp. I mean, we have caught some giants on live shrimp. But if you're specifically trying to catch your biggest ones, those are my two favorite bait choices, and they will work from the Gulf Beach all the way to the north end of Mobile Bay.
Love it. And so
that's my deal.
And what kind of areas, what kind of structure and stuff do you like to target in depths?
So early May, I'm gonna do a lot of my fishing in shallower water, say 5 feet and less, with probably a hard focus on say 3 foot and less. Okay. And then towards the end of the month, once water temperature warms up and starts getting and staying above 80 degrees, Like right now, our water temperature is starting out at like 70, bumping up to like 73, 74. But once it gets up and stays over 80, then I'll start looking at some of the deeper structures like the gas rigs that we have out in Mobile Bay, the Dolphin Island Bridge, some of the deeper structures that are, say, 8 feet and deeper. There's a bunch of shrimp boat wrecks and reefs and stuff like that out in the Mississippi Sound. All of those places are really good deeper water areas, and believe it, you can utilize those baits, the croakers and the pogies around all those areas I mentioned. But a lot of times people go more for the numbers in those areas, and they'll use slip corks or free line rigs and use live shrimp, and those will certainly produce the numbers. And like as I mentioned earlier, you may even catch an 8-pounder on a live shrimp. So don't ever count it out.
Love it. And have you found a better tide for you? I know you obviously have to fish every day and all day regardless, but if you could pick one, have you found there's a better moon phase or certain tides that you like for trout?
So shallower water, I like an early morning high tide. Say something that's going to peak maybe 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, even as early as maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. And then once that tide starts falling, we'll usually slide out into some deeper water. But there's some really good deep water options to catch on a incoming tide. And so like if the tide's not going to peak till later, then I will probably start deep and work my way shallow. Despite the water temperature, I'll start deep and work my way shallow. So like even if there's a high tide at high noon, we may have a tough bite all morning and then finish up in a 2 foot deep flat at high noon, 85-degree water temperature, and we're whacking the trout in 2 feet of water, where most people have already given up and gone home. So just you want to pay attention to things like that. But the incoming tide is usually a really good tide on those big deep structures like the gas rigs and the Dolphin Island Bridge and some of the range markers out in the bay and stuff. That anything that's, like I said, probably 8 feet deep and deeper. And some of the gas rigs that we have out there are 20 to 22 feet deep. And I mean, those trout relate to those rigs just the same as they do the ones that are in 10 and 11 feet of water. So it takes a little bit of dialing in as far as how each rig sets up here. But if you're patient and you try different scenarios, different setups on the rigs, that's where a trolling motor with anchor mode is really helpful, because you can fish a lot of areas pretty quickly instead of having to pull up an anchor every 10 minutes and try to reposition. So do y'all ever fish in deep water like that down in Tampa, or most of your stuff on the flat?
Well, we do, but it's not for trout. And that was going to be my next question. Where are they in the water column? Like, I've never fished 20 feet of water for a trout before.
Yes.
Where are they?
That's a great question, Joe. The harder the tide's moving, it seems like the closer they're going to get to the bottom and to the structure. The slower the tide's moving, they can be anywhere from the top to the bottom. And typically what I'll do is especially in the summertime when we're live bait fishing, use a lot of slip corks, say for a good example would be me showing up to a rig or a reef or something, and I'll set I have 3 anglers, and I'll set all 3 of them with slightly different depths, trying to focus from the top third to all the way to the bottom. And whoever gets bit first, I take notice of that, and I try to get them to get right back in the same spot where they got bit before. And if it happens again, then I go ahead and adjust everybody else's depth pretty quick to that range. And then that would be like what I would do if the tide is moving pretty swiftly. And then if it's a really light tide, the easiest way to try to figure out if there's some fish there is to put a little tiny split shot on a live shrimp and toss it out and let it just sink real slow through the water. And if they're there and they're hungry, they're going to bite it at 4 feet deep or 8 feet deep or wherever they are. And they're going to cover more water to come and eat that bait than when that tide's moving real fast. When the tide's moving fast, they're going to lock into an area and kind of stay there and wait on bait to come to them.
Yep.
So that's a pretty big deal for us when we're trying to figure out at what level of the water they are. But I also use my electronics a lot. When you start talking about trying to catch fish in say 12 to 24 feet deep, I can utilize my electronics, side vision and down vision on my Ray Marine and be able to see where the fish are. Now, granted, sometimes you'll be fooled, and that big school on the bottom right next to the rig leg looks like speckled trout, and it turns out to be hardhead catfish. Well, you got to send a bait down there to detect to figure out what the fish type is.
Yep.
And then you may see these really nice, pretty marks and some nice looking fish at 8 feet deep at a 16-foot spot, and it turns out to be skipjack. So you have to do some experimentation every time out. And it does. And if you're using live bait, it is going to require you to catch some undesirable fish. But now on the artificial bait side of things, those same areas, using some slower sinking bait when the tide, same kind of concept. If the tide's ripping, you're going to have to use something heavy and get it near the bottom. If it's a really light current, use something that's a slow sinking and covering the entire water column. And I would err on the side of trying to mimic some sort of finfish like the Slam Shady does. And then also you can throw in like some artificial shrimp imitations, something, like a DOA shrimp or American Tackle has a rattling shrimp. Those are good options to cover the water column. A voodoo shrimp is a good one, but if you use the one that's bigger, it's going to get all the way to the bottom pretty quick. And you're going to be, anyway, it's just, that's, so you're going to get to the bottom faster with one of those larger shrimp. And anyway, you just kind of got to feel your way through it. But I like to let the tide kind of help me decide what strategy is going to be my focus, if that makes sense.
Yep. Love it, man. All right. Let's pivot to redfish.
So, all right.
In this time of year, you could talk about live bait, lures, obviously basically same question, type of areas, not necessarily to catch, the 40 incher, obviously those are nice, but, I think most people, including me really, especially when they got family out, I just want to get tight lines. I want to catch a bunch of fish. What are your thoughts, best kind of places to go and tactics and what to look for?
Well, man, I have a lot of success anywhere from fishing in the creeks and the rivers all the way out to the Gulf Beach, catching redfish. I'm a real conditions fisherman. So on a day when the wind isn't going to allow me to get out, I'm going to stick into the creeks and the rivers, and those are going to be areas where you're mostly going to catch a lot of juveniles. You're going to catch a lot more of your little 14 and 15 inch rat reds. But you always have the shot at catching one, say up to 30 inches or maybe even a little bigger. So I would hang a little closer to your estuaries for numbers. And then the larger, like upper slot and over slot fish, more of those fish are going to be out on the outer edges of the estuaries. Instead of being in those creeks and rivers, you're going to find a lot of those, say, 22 to 30, 32 inch fish that are going to be more in the open areas that are going to be close to your estuary systems. Like in my area, we've got Weeks Bay, and then off of Weeks Bay is Fish River, Magnolia River. That's kind of its own estuary. And within Weeks Bay is pretty good. But you'll probably catch more numbers in Magnolia River right now. But there's not going to be as many of the keeper size fish in there if you're looking to keep some fish. So really, if I'm strictly trying to figure out the best way and the easiest way to catch a redfish in Alabama, I'm going to have either a shrimp or a shrimp imitation on there. Now, sure, there's a lot of other fun ways to catch them, and we caught some really nice reds on topwater the other day up in one of these creeks. But hands down, day in, day out, if I'm just going to try to catch redfish, I'm going to have something shrimp or shrimp imitation on there. We've had a lot of luck with adding a product called Fish Bite. Just a little dab of that, a little nugget of Fish Bite added on to a artificial shrimp bait really enhances that. And if you don't use that, I've used Procure and we've used Gulp Shrimp. I don't have an absolute favorite, but the Fish Bite is nice because if you're around a lot of croakers or catfish and stuff, they can't really get it off the hook real well. So it does beat the heck out of buying $4 a dozen shrimp and feeding 2/3 of your shrimp to the croakers and the hardheads. That's a really good alternative. But it seems like once you get out in a little bit more open water, fishing docks and dock pilings and stuff like that, most of your fish are going to be right at the lower slot all the way up to, you may catch a 40 incher right in there around the piers and stuff. So, and then also, like, I'm kind of stepping back on the conditions. That's how I run my business, is I fish the conditions. And if the wind's going to blow hard, I'm going to get on a lee bank and I'm going to take my time, and we're going to fish slow and we're going to be thorough. I'm going to almost be like a kayaker, and I'm going to take my time and just pick everything apart. And then if it's light winds and we have free range, then I go with whatever, whatever conditions look good. I mean, if the water's nice and high in the morning, then I want to go try some real skinny water areas, and that's where I'm gonna feel my most comfort. And but most of my red fishing in Alabama, I find I do my most damage in probably 3 feet of water or less. But there's certainly some deeper water options. Like I said, in some of these rivers and creeks, you may have 8, 10, 12 feet of water, where you can fish some deeper stuff. But I mean, as far as catching numbers, getting the rod bent, that's my thought. That's my strategy.
In these creeks, I'm trying to envision them because they're obviously different than the ones that we have. Are you fishing around little points? Are there little oyster bars and stuff? What are you looking for? What are the productive areas? Obviously, if you see bait and birds and stuff, what else are you looking for?
I like to, like you mentioned it. I mean, some irregularities. If there's a nice sharp point where it could be a good ambush point. I mean, I'm looking at any little irregularity in the shoreline that I can cast at or have a customer cast at. And then also, I mean, really paying close attention to what's happening in the water. Let's see, this past weekend, my stepdad and I fished for a little bit, and man, we fished a lot of area I felt pretty comfortable in, and we weren't hitting on much. And I started noticing a little bit more pushes and weights on the surface that we were kind of writing off as mullet early, and we were throwing subsurface and popping corks and stuff and staying down. And I kept seeing these pushes, and I grabbed the top water, and this was like 9-10 o'clock in the morning. I grabbed the top water, and second cast got blown up. I was like, all right, so we've been throwing the wrong thing all morning. And then I see another push and catch a fish, and it was I was, the conditions put me in that creek because the winds were blowing so bad. But it took, I didn't read what the fish were showing me until I saw it, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 times. So I don't know, maybe I passed over 5 or 6 redfish, because I was a little hard headed on not wanting to throw top water at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, as much as I fish, I'm going to make some kind of mistake about every day. So, I mean, one thing I would have to say for any of your listeners is, don't be afraid to make a mistake, because you're going to make it regardless. So, I saw some activity, and I should have threw top water after about the second one I saw, and probably would have upped my chances on catching more fish. So, don't be afraid to throw a top water at a mullet about 5 or 6 times before you realize it's a mullet, because it could be a redfish.
True. Well, good segue. One of my favorite things to ask fishing guides like yourself are the top mistakes, the things that maybe you learned the hard way. Obviously, you just shared one. These could be mistakes that you see on your boat. Could be casting mistakes, setting the hook too quick, too slow, bad retrieval. It could be mistakes that you see of just the average weekend warrior. Like, oh man, I wish I could just go over there and tell them this. What do you see? What are some things that you wish someone to maybe share with you many years ago, or vice versa?
Joe, this probably needs to be like a 3-hour segment now. Another trip in this All right, so I will say one thing I see anglers do, and I don't know if this is a coastal thing or not, but we have a lot of these artificial reefs and oyster reefs and stuff that are in our area that are really specific areas, and I'll see guys in boats and they will idle over the reef to set up on the other side of the reef to then start fishing in the prop wash that they just put down while they rode over the reef. So that's kind of a mind-blowing thing to me, because I do it so often, but it's something to think about. So if you're wanting to fish a specific area, a specific reef, and I'm talking stuff that's like 8 feet in deep and less.
Oh, wow.
So if you've got a 200 horsepower, 300 horsepower motor, whatever, even if it's an 8 horsepower friggin' tiller handle, don't idle over where you plan to fish. Go around where you plan to fish. Troll a motor in if you've got a trolling motor, and be as stealthy as you can, approaching where the fish are and where the fish should be. Because I mean, granted, the fish can come back. They're going to spook off, and if there's not additional threats to the fish to not have them like settle back in, they'll come back. But do yourself a favor and idle around it, give yourself a lot of berth away from where you plan to fish, and try to stealthily get back in there. Another thing, I have to do this. I have to tell this to people all the time. I love using circle hooks for redfish, and it's because usually I can take kids and novice anglers, and they're like the best candidates for circle hooks because they're not paying attention to every little tap on the bait.
Yep.
So they almost need the rod to be pulled out of their hand before they realize they have a bite. And a circle hook does a fantastic job at that. I mean, the fish can almost choke it and pull the hook back out of its mouth into the corner of its mouth. And it's a great fight. The fish will come in, rarely ever throws the hook. But my somewhat avid angler, is sitting there trying to anticipate the bite and sets the hook as hard as he can, like he's trying to pull a bass out of a treetop, and he's going to miss the fish every time. And I say he because 99% of the time it's my angler who knows everything about fishing. So if you want to increase your catches, I mean, a circle hook can really increase the amount of fish that you catch because they don't pull off very easy. You just have to learn to let that fish go ahead and eat it, and then let that rod load up and just start fighting the fish without setting the hook. It's crazy for the bass guy, I know, but that's the deal. The other mistake with another hook setting jerking motion that'll get you in trouble is fishing top water. I never set the hook on top water. I work the bait. When the fish hits it, I take up slack, take up the line until I feel the fish. I never set the hook because your treble hook's flying at you at about 60 miles an hour is not a good thing.
No.
And your buddy will appreciate it. So those are two good things. Live bait tip. Use a hook that is appropriate for your bait size. I know some people that'll have one standard hook for everything. So we were just talking about a circle hook. That doesn't mean that I have one circle hook that's going to do the job for every single fish out there. I'm going to have a hook that's that's ideal size for the bait type. If I'm using little 2-inch long shrimp, we're going to have a certain size hook. If we're trying to use 6-inch long pogies, we're going to have to use a different hook. You have to have a hook that's going to be appropriately sized for your bait. And not only the size of the bait, but also the ability of the bait to carry that hook and present, and to look natural in the water. As soon as your live bait becomes not natural looking, you have just decreased your chances of catching the target fish, and probably increased your catches of hardheads and croakers.
Yeah. It's funny. We did another one of our popular courses is live bait mastery with Captain Peter Deeks here in Florida.
That was a great one.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest parts. And I think it was an aha moment for so many people, which is, you said it, is match the hook to the bait, not the type of fish you're catching. He's like, you'd be shocked at the size of a redfish. If you catch 40-inch red on the smallest little hook possible, you got to match the bait to the hook. And obviously in the course, he talks about exactly what sizes. And then also, just to your point, how obnoxious it looks underwater and when you have the wrong setup. And that's probably one of the biggest live bait mistakes out there. It's so costly. So I'm glad you brought that one up.
That has to be one of the number one problems that people have when they're live bait fishing is that they think that, okay, I have a live shrimp on here. Oh, I have a live croaker on here, whatever. And they have this giant hook or this 2-ounce weight or whatever that completely takes the fish or the bait and changes its behavior. It's no longer looking natural. So you're better off trying to make a piece of plastic look natural than, because you just really drastically reduced your catch on your live bait. Yep. Now, certainly there are some, there's always exceptions to the rule, like like the throwing the popping cork and you're reeling it as fast as you can with a shrimp skiing on top of the water, and the 3-pound trout comes up and eats your shrimp as it's skiing across the top of the water. Well, that's because that fish was fired up and it saw the cork and took advantage of the shrimp, and it wasn't thinking. So there are certainly exceptions to the rule, but try to make your live bait look as natural as possible. Put them in their environment. Let's see. I don't know. Those are some pretty good. What other? Do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, the ones that I keep hearing, it's funny. It's positioning and approach, because I think that's something you mentioned it in terms of like, idling over the spot you're about to fish. The positioning and approach piece of it, it's not really taught, right? I mean, in most fishing shows and magazines are always talking about the bait or the lure or the rig, and rarely are they talking about positioning and approach. And then the casting part, it seems to be a constant thing that guys are saying. They get someone on the boat that it's decked out in all the latest gear, and they look like they know what they're talking about. They say they know what they're talking about. They talk about the fish they've caught, and then they're the worst casters ever. And and sometimes it doesn't matter if you got live bait and you're slowly, kind of doing that active live bait fishing. The cast is not critical, but there are many times where the cast is absolutely critical, and that also goes to positioning and approach, right? I mean, you could spook an entire area if you approach it or position your boat or kayak the wrong way, and if you going in there and casting the wrong, like you said, a 2-ounce lead in shallow water, and you're scaring everything. It's like throwing a bowling ball out there. So it seems to be those are two of the main ones. And I'm really glad you brought up the live bait hook, because I hadn't heard that one in a while, and it just reminded me of Peter's course. So
yeah, that is a great course. Like it took me a while to get all the way through it, just because I was watching it a little bit at a time. But is like this. I'm also giving you kudos that it is so nice to be able to get into a course like that and be able to just watch it at your own pace. Yep. And man, that's another thing is I'm doing this for a living, but I can learn something from Peter. I can learn something from somebody, from you and Luke. And I'm always trying to educate myself. So that will be another mistake, is somebody that thinks they know they've got it all figured out. They're doing it wrong if they think they have it figured out, because every successful angler I know is constantly learning and trying to teach themselves more and more, and to ask other guides, ask other anglers questions. So if you're ever, and which that guy may not be listening to this podcast because he already knows everything. So, but if you are listening to this podcast and you think that everything that I've said or has been said is something you already knew, then I encourage you to ask more questions to other anglers, and you'll be enlightened for sure.
Yep, I'm glad you said that, and I honestly didn't know that you'd even watched that course, which is pretty funny. But we've seen, because we've done some surveying, and obviously we're we keep tabs on our community, on the active people, and I mean there's hundreds of full-time fishing guides that are insider members. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's for, weekend warriors and beginners. But there are tons of full-time fishing guides for that same reason. You can always learn something. So I'm glad you said that. I see what time it is, and I have to bolt in 5 minutes to help with the kids in this crazy time with all 3 kids home. But a couple quick questions. Why ugly fishing? So uglyfishing.com is Patric's site. What's the deal with the ugly fishing?
Oh man, actually, it started out with this stupid ugly stick hat. I think I bought at Walmart, and it had the word ugly really pronounced on the hat, and I got made fun of by my fishing peers. And I typically had the ugly boat, so it just seemed to fit. So they would, hey, ugly, whatever. So I just adopted it. And then when it came time, then I got my captain license, and it came time to have a business name. And I said, man, that's got to be what my business name is. I want it to be memorable. And also, you never know when it's going to be an ugly day of fishing. So,
that's good.
So, that's it in a nutshell. And I appreciate you asking about that, because it's, and most people that find me via just Google search, they're like, man, I really liked your name. And then I saw your logo. I liked your logo. So good job. And, so it's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, and the logo is really cool. We'll put a little image on it, and we'll put a link to your site in the show notes. So if you're listening in your car or working out or whatever you're doing, you can go to saltstrong.com /podcast. And you'll see it up at the top, or just go to uglyfishing.com and you can check out Patric and book a trip with him, etc. Last question: do you know what the Alabama leprechaun is? Being that you're from Alabama.
Yes, well, it's the Crichton leprechaun. It's more specific.
So
the Crichton leprechaun.
So we're gonna have to get you a pack. Our next lure, the one we're doing right now, we've been testing this thing out for 10 months or so at least. You know about Slam Shady, and so we want to come up with a jerk shad. My brother was more the tournament angler, and he's just so patient and a whole lot more precision fishing than me. I catch a lot of fish because of him. And, the 2 lures that he would go out with were a jerk shad for like super shallow water and the fish are a little spooky. And then, a paddle tail, just like, it's like I could win a tournament with these 2. Obviously he carries a few more in his bag usually, but he's like, if all I had was these 2, I could catch fish anywhere. So we've been playing around with this one, and we kept testing it. We kept putting more gold into it. And we're like, all right. And all of a sudden that video, like someone had shared it, and I was like, that's the name. It's the Alabama leprechaun. So it's got a lot of gold flakes in it. It's kind of like a watermelon green, because that's always been a proven, a great jerk shad for us. And so I'll have to make sure we get you a pack. And I have a feeling it'll do well in Alabama. So it's the new lure.
Oh my God, dude. I love the idea.
Show me the gold.
Yeah. Where the gold at?
I'm so glad you know what that is, because some people, I told my dad, he's 70, and I was like, Dad, you know what the Alabama leprechaun is? Like, no. But I showed him the video, and he's 70, and once again he's laughing like crazy, like rewind it, and he saw the what's the picture, the amateur sketch,
the amateur sketch, yeah.
Oh, good stuff.
The little things that make Alabama famous.
Yep. Oh, brother. Well, this has been good, man. I know we can certainly have multiple episodes. You're always so much fun to talk with, and a wealth of knowledge. And we'll put some links down in the show notes as well about some of these virtual fishing tournaments that we first started talking about. And now you got some great tips on how to win them, how to go out there and catch more species, a lot more fish, bigger fish. And whether you're in Alabama or Florida or Texas, Carolinas, a lot of these same tips and the mistakes. I really love the mistakes. I know will work for you. So, Brother Patric, it's always a pleasure, man. And I know I want to give him one more really big piece of kudos. So Luke and I started doing these live podcast, which is honestly kind of scary, you know, because you don't know once you hit play. Like our promise is we don't stop. It's no cuts, and we've had a couple that were painfully brutal. We've had some where we're like high five. We're like, I can't believe we caught that many fish. And Patric had reached out and said, hey, like, I'm in. You come on my boat. We'll do it live. No editing. I'm confident we'll make it happen. So I love that. And we were about to try to book something here, and all this coronavirus thing hit. So as soon as this whole thing's lifted, we're gonna make a little drive up to Alabama and do some fishing, buddy.
Man, I'm looking forward to it, Joe.
Yes, sir. Well, everyone, please go check them out. Subscribe to Ugly Fishing and Patric there on Instagram and all the social media accounts, and definitely book them if you're up anywhere near that area. Definitely give him a call and get on his calendar. It is a fun time, knowledgeable guy, and super fun person to be around. So we thank you so much, and everyone go check out uglyfishing.com. And if you want to see all the show notes, go to saltstrong.com/podcast. We're out. Peace. See you, buddy.
Peace. See ya.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was pain.